Between the years of 1899 and 1901, rebellion ignites in China, stemming from years of imperialistic greed, natural disasters, and hate towards foreigners and Christians. The Boxer Rebellion, as it is referred to, is a story often brought up in schools, but is never really fully explained. Here tonight, you'll get a full grasp of what really went down in China at the turn of the century. 1860. After the Second Opium War, the Treaty of Tientsin and the Convention of Peking granted foreign missionaries the freedom to preach anywhere in China, and by land for churches. Separately, missionaries had special privileges that allowed them to shield their followers from punishment. The other side to the foreign nations occupying China was a group called the Boxers. Known as the Righteous Harmonious Fists, this group was capable of martial arts and was mostly made up of unemployed young men, many of whom were teenagers. The group claimed to have supernatural invulnerability against cannons, rifle shots, and knife attacks. Ultimately, the extremely bad weather conditions and natural disasters, Western attempts at colonizing China, and anti-imperialist movement are what fueled the group. Additionally, in 1898, the young Guangxu Emperor and his reform-minded supporters attempted what is now known as the 100 Days Reform. This was a failed reform movement that attempted to build a modern education system, modernize China's military, and change the government from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. It was widely perceived that this crisis that resulted from this was as a result of foreign aggression. Additionally, Empress Dowager Cixi used this failed reform to seize power. The Empress would issue defenses for the Boxers, which would cause angst for the foreign powers. In the spring of 1900, the Boxers would spread north rapidly from the Shandong province into areas near Beijing. The Boxers would burn churches and kill Chinese Christians. In response, a multinational force of 8 nations came together to protect the legations in Beijing, then called Peking. The nations would set up defenses for their respective missions. The Boxers would eventually converge on Beijing, resulting in a 55-day siege where Western troops and numerous Chinese Christians would hold out till help would arrive. Most were not well armed. In fact, they only had one cannon. Interestingly enough, the cannon was called the International gun, or the International, because the cannon's barrel was British, the carriage Italian, the shells Russian, and the operating crew Americans. The defenders would suffer greatly until help would finally arrive. A force of 55,000 made up of Japanese, Russian, British, French, United States, German, Italian, and Austro-Hungarian forces would capture Tianjin, and the forces would also battle at Yankun. The international force would reach Beijing on August 14th. The British were the first to reach the legation's quarters, finally relieving the forces there. Executions of Boxer supporters soon followed, along with the plundering of Beijing and the surrounding countryside. In the end, the nations of the West would create what is called the Boxer Protocol. This would allow the execution of Boxer-supporting government officials, provide provisions for foreign troops stationed in Beijing, and a retribution of 450 million taels of silver, now worth $10 billion based upon modern silver prices. The rebellion forced the Qing dynasty to enact major reforms and further weaken their control over China. China, eventually, would gain its official independence in 1949.